Once again, once again, once again, joy will arise. Be fool not, O night, the morn will break, the morn will break, the morn will break. Beware, O darkness, the sun will shine, the sun will shine, the sun will shine.
Today we have, as Sophie already said, the commemoration of MasheikMahmood Khan, who was the 5-year younger brother of Hazrat Inayat Khan. There was still a still younger brother, Musharraf Maulana Khan, but he was very much younger and educated in different circumstances. Maheboob Khan, like Hazrat Inayat Khan himself, still grew up in a very classical Indian tradition of the Indian statehoods. The Indian states which had the individual rulers, and so had a great tradition of culture. These rulers' courts generally were the focal points of typically Indian civilization in whatever form. That form, Hazrat often quotes that in his lectures, forms of behavior, of attitude, of etiquette on the one hand, on the other also of all the Indian civilized arts, more particular miniature art, which reached very great heights in India, miniature painting, then of course poetry in all the rich collection of Indian languages. The poetry was really dominant, strongly influenced by Persian poetry, and on the one hand in Urdu, a poetry that was quite explicit, but also in the so-called Bhakti poetry in India, that was a sense of reaction, that was a kind of taken over of these Persian models into the Indian mainstream of Indian languages. So they grew up in that very rich, versatile civilization where two completely full-grown civilizations, that of Hindu Buddhism on the one hand and of Islam on the other, had lived not only together but had interpenetrated for so many centuries. And it was in that joint awareness of two different civilizations, which, however, in Sufism and in Vedanta, through different methods, reached the same mystical heights of human awareness. That was their point of departure. Anyway, that was the kind of value in which they grew up. So Maheboob Khan, as I said, 5 years younger, he was born in 1887, was on the one hand very close to Hazrat Inayat Khan. On the other hand also, he was a very different character, He, in a sense, took after his father, Rahmatullah Khan, or Rahmat Khan, he took after that tradition of his fathers, whereas Hazrat Inayat Khan himself, of course, was the typical heir of his maternal grandfather, the head of the family, the patriarch of the family, Maula Bakhsh. So these two different people who each had their own genius, each also had their own heir, their own, the younger generation, which was really representing them to a maximum degree. As Inayat Khan from Maula Bakhsh, Maheboob Khan from Rahmat Khan and his family line. Although, as Inayat Khan also says, his line of thinking was very different from that of his father, but still he was typically representative of all the values which his father's lineage represented. One thing about Inayat Khan, which Inayat Khan already testifies to in the biography as well, that he was intensely musical, an intensely musical sense, and he had a voice so beautiful that somewhere, as the Inayat Khan says, sometimes I felt that his voice was even better than that of Mullah Bakhsh, the man with a great reputation in India generally, who had become a national figure in Indian cultural life. But on the other hand, MasheikMahmood Khan was also extremely modest, reserved, and didn't wish to really transmit his voice. He didn't like having to give concerts, etc. And it was only his great devotion to Hazrat Inayat Khan which made him at all join him in his endeavors in giving concerts in public, etc. So there you find the extraordinary. There was a basic unity of mind, of soul, of purpose in them, but still expressed in two very distinct personalities. And yes, that was actually, one could also put it this way, that Maheboob Khan, on the one hand, and that much younger brother Musharraf as well, they were the parental brothers of Hazrat Inayat Khan, and as younger brothers, they were in a sense subordinate to the elder brother in different ways, really in three different ways. In the first place, as the elder brother of that family, Hazrat Inayat Khan took the place of their father. Once their father was no longer there, or their father was not represented, not present among them, it was Hazrat Inayat Khan who came in the place of his father in relation to the younger brothers. That was one form in which they were, so to speak, subject to him. In the second place, Hazrat Inayat Khan was also the heir and later the representative of the Masheikh clan, of which they were the last representatives. And of course, in the third and the most important place, Hazrat Inayat Khan was the great Sufi saint and deeply revered in the very first place by his brothers, who will eventually also take all that inspiration of Hazrat Inayat Khan and represent it in their own way and after Hazrat Inayat Khan's own lifetime. That, of course, was the great thing, that when Hazrat Inayat Khan came to the West, and there found that he intended to represent music there in the first place, emphasizing also the value of music, the relationship of music and spiritual life, of mysticism, which was an ancient Indian tradition, which Hazrat Inayat Khan revived very notably in his own teachings. But we have heard enough about that already. But at the same time, there was this way of representation of Indian music, which Hazrat Inayat Khan was very happy to do, and MasheikMahmood Khan always very reluctant to speak about those very things which he lived in, mostly which his joy in living in. There's an interesting testimony of this in the memoirs of Theo van Horen, who wrote his memoirs of his experience of Hazrat Inayat Khan and of, as he calls his book, Western Sufism, and who came to Suresnes in different years at the time of Hazrat Inayat Khan. And then he tells that, yes, everybody, Sufi Murids, they used to know Murshid Ali Khan very well, the cousin brother, 1 year older of Hazrat Inayat Khan. They knew him very well. They knew the young Musharraf Maulabir Khan also very well. But they were more or less surprised to hear that in between there was still another brother whom they really never knew and never knew about and never saw. And Van Hoorn writes very interesting about that. Yes, he was the man who found his great happiness in music, in composing music, being occupied with that in all his time available. And so that was the reason that he did not really appear in many of the in many of the Murids meetings, etc. Now, that relationship of Maheboob Khan with music was quite a notable one. his first he experienced, and Moshe Nathan experienced, that people in the West, whether in America or in Europe, were willing to take some interest in Indian music, but as already became very clear at the early days, they were much more interested in what Moshe said about the spiritual dimension of music, the mysticism of music. And as I told you the other day, music and mysticism in ancient India were really like brothers, like twins, almost interchangeable. So that is what they took greater interest in. And that was an unexpected result of Moshe giving Indian music in the West, preceded by a lecture. And since he preceded it by such a lecture, there were people who said, well, all right, it's Indian music, we try to learn it, to know it, but that will in time we try to understand it. But what you said about it in a spiritual sense, about the connection of music and esotericism, the music and mysticism, that was so extremely interesting. That is what we want to learn from you in the first place. And that is how Sufism in the West started, not by any intentional way of wanting to spread Sufism. Later, Rodrigues have tried to impute that to Hazrat Inayat Khan, tried to impute that to his own Murshid, Abu Hashim, etc. But those are all pious legends of later times. What was his intention was to come to learn European music, see if there were any elements in European music that might be useful in India, as the violin, which had already been introduced there, and whether other elements of European music could be valuable for the Indian music. And of course, in general, what I want to do from the youngest time onward, just travel in the West and get to know that remarkable world of the West, which through the British Empire then in full force arrived in India as well. So that, and then coming to the West, they, of course, came to learn European music, especially Masheikh Maheboob Khan already had learned Western music from an uncle who had studied in Europe, who had been completely Anglicized, and a great enthusiasm for everything Europe had to offer to India. And so Maheboob Khan already was a virtuoso pianist by the time he came to Europe, and had many pupils in India. He was much liked as a teacher also in Baroda, where he lived. But then he left everything when a telegram arrived from Hazrat Inayat Khan that he and the elder cousin brother Muhammad Ali Khan, 1 year older than Hazrat Inayat Khan, had to be ready because within a few days, something like 10 days or a fortnight, they would be leaving for the West. So that was a certain change. They had to give up all their own positions, their own expectations, their own views of their life in India, completely abolished in a way, because they got a call from Inayat Khan and they would follow it. Of course, they never thought they would be absent so long. They thought of 2 or 3 years traveling through the West, receiving their family allowances from India. That would be their tour of Europe. All that were expectations which did not work out for many different reasons, but in particular because Hazrat Inayat Khan in his lectures in Sufism got so much response from many different sides that continuously kept them in Europe, in the West. During the First World War, they were blocked in England. So in that way, gradually, they got more or less settled in Europe. And this house, Fazl Manzil, where Murshid arrived in 1922, of course, is the witness of that, the remaining witness of their final settlement in Europe. Now, Maheboob Khan noticed also, as they all did, that Indian music played by Indian instruments, sung by Indian types of voice, were difficult to understand in the West. And what happened then when they were in Russia, there the son of the famous Tolstoy, that was Serge Tolstoy, was a musician himself, and he was extremely interested in the music of Hazrat Inayat Khan and his brothers, because they traveled from America to Europe and then to Russia. And so there was another colleague of Serge Tolstoy, Vladimir Pol, and he proposed to make a kind of theatrical performance called Shakuntala, after a famous Indian tale, and he proposed to have music in that, the music of the repertoire of Hazrat Inayat Khan and his brothers as they played with their Indian instruments. Vladimir was writing these melodies out in Western four-part harmony for Western instrument, for piano and Western instrument, and in that way present Indian music, as he thought, in an understandable way to European ears. That was a worthwhile attempt. The music was much better understandable through in these techniques, European technique, for European ears. But of course, for Moshe and his brothers, it was still a kind of derivation which seemed overdone, because not only for Vladimir Pol, also other people who tried to transcribe Indian music for in a Western voice or Western instruments, they made that harmony so typical a European harmony, such a heavy kind of accompaniment, that typical Indian taste, that typical Indian element, more or less receded. To them, that was not really recognizable Indian music. Now there, Maheboob Khan had an advantage which really nobody else had, and that is precisely which makes his music a unique kind of music, because he had mastered in India the two different forms of Indian music, the northern Hindustani style, the southern Carnatic style, so the Aryan and Dravidian parts of the Indian language map. And in addition to that, he had already started studying Western music in Baroda from his uncle. Then he continued that when he was in Europe. So he had a kind of mastery of the three compository styles, each in equal balance. So what he did, and there we get a very interesting development in the course of his life, he added the Western harmony, four-part harmony, to make his songs understandable, and at the same time developing in such a way that they had an optimal recognizability as from the Indian point of view as well, which was really a great accomplishment. That is as far as the songs of their Indian repertoire was concerned, the repertoire which they gave concerts with in Europe and in America, and also the songs from the different traditions, the Hindustani and the Carnatic one. But the third, and in the course of time, most loved, most admired mode of his songs were his personal compositions, which he made on certain poems of Hazrat Inayat Khan from these booklets, Gayan, Vadan, and Nirtan. And those were his personal compositions on those texts. And so there's this wonderful phenomenon that you had these wonderful words of Hazrat Inayat Khan, composed and therefore given an extra dimension of beauty by Maheboob Khan, and sung then by Muhammad Ali Khan, the cousin brother, who had also trained. He was a very accomplished singer, had a wonderful voice, and at the same time he had been trained in Western music as well. So as long as they lived, that was a wonderful tradition of representing Indian music. That means vocal music songs, because in India the vocal music stands highest in the order of appreciation, and so that was as long as they lived, they were extremely well loved in Sufi circles. But Maheboob Khan, as from his Indian point of view, never liked to publish his music, to commercialize his music. The music that was printed during his lifetime, some of the Indian songs and some of his personal English Sufi songs, were done by others and not by himself. And those were really quite few, really. maybe not more than 10 or something. Some were published also in the Sufi Quarterly of those days. That was the first beginning of his songs. If you will see, look at the program, you will see the certain chronology of the songs. He really started writing songs for the Sufi Quarterly. And from then, after that, he never looked back. He went on and on composing as much time as he had. And unfortunately, after he had to succeed Hazrat Inayat Khan as the leader of Sufism, he had less and less opportunity of composing, which everybody regretted very much, but of course he was overwhelmed by the Sufi work on all sides. And only in the wartime, when all Sufi work had stopped, again he found an opportunity of composing both Indian songs out of their repertoire and personal compositions from the books of Hazrat Inayat Khan. So that by now we have about, depending on how you count them, 25 songs composed with English text, and about 24 of them are from poems of Hazrat Inayat Khan, and about 60 Indian songs, which he composed with great happiness in the course of his life and during the wartime days. So you will see that kind of chronology in the program notes which you have received. You can see how the presentation of the songs tonight is also according to the time frame in which they were composed. And I think by now you have heard enough. I used to almost be thinking, when at last is he going to stop talking? And reminding Masheikh Inayat Khan's words, all would rather have a song than a speech. So here you are. Let us hope for our soloist, Dinis Rodrigues, the Portuguese tenor singing, beautiful singer, and Tarana, Jobin, all of you know her, the competent American musician who will accompany him on the piano. So where are they?
Merhaba Sayyid Maki Madani ul Arabi Dilo Jan Bada Fidayat She'ajab Kush Rakabi Sayyadi Anta Habibi wa Tabibi Kalabi Kudasi, Chandra Sevitam Sigulagan Pujitam Shri Kadam Vabanavasam Balakamba Sahitam Balakamba Sahitam Chandra Sevitam Sigulagan Pujitam Shri Kadam samaragarere asa remapani nilakantam bhajeam sadalam nirajasana dhinutam balakam basahitam balakam basahitam balachandra sevitam siriguru gohan pujitam shrikadam vabanavasam sanidapa magare gare sanidapa anisamaragare re asa.
Indian songs as made by the composer are always very short. 4 or 8 bars, that is it. That's what the composer does in a particular raga, and it is left for the performer to elaborate that into a concert piece of, let's say, an hour or 3/4. This is a full-grown thing. So the composer limits himself, especially in Hindustani music, to giving a brief song, and that is a characteristic you find it throughout Maheboob Khan's works, except that, of course, also in the English text works, but of course these English texts do not lend themselves for Indian variations, but the style remains the same. Short, brief pieces for further elaboration by the soloist. Excuse me for the interruption, but this is making it.
Let thy wish become my desire. Let thy will become my deed. Let thy word become my speech, beloved, and let thy love become my creed. Let my plant bring forth thy flowers, let my fruits produce thy seed. Let my heart become thy lute, beloved, and my body thy flute of reed. Heart hath its head on its own palm, face of the heart is veiled. Heart's hands are bound with iron chains, feet of the heart are nailed. Eyes of the heart are never dry, heart speaks only through tears. Ears of the heart are so keen that the voice from a distance it hears. Voice of the heart is silent, yet far-reaching is heart's cry. Heart hath no question nor answer. Heart is expressed in a sigh. The ways of the heart are mysterious. The heart hath the mind of a child. Heart's breath is full of tenderness. Heart's expression is mine. The ideal alone is heart's deity. Constant yearning is its love. Heart is not concerned with life or death. The heart stands firm through all strife. Beauty is heart's only object, its inspirer, its all. Heart is all power that there is. The angels attend its call. The heart is itself its own medicine, but all its own wounds heals, and none can ever imagine what pain of love that heart can feel. The path of the heart is thorny, but leads in the end to bliss. Hope is the staff that heart holds tandagarasa, para jule jule yedo, para jule jule yedo, sarvalato, hoshiara karito, sukashanti deto, sukashanti deto, pratakari tandagarasa, vara jule jule yeto, sarvalato, oshiara karito, sukashanti deto, pratakari tanagarasa, vara jule jule yeto, sarvalato, oshiara karito, sukashanti deto, sukashanti deto. How shall I thank thee? How shall I thank thee? How shall I thank thee? Thank thee, my King. How shall I thank thee? Thank thee, my King, for thy bountiful gifts. Every gift thou givest me, my generous Lord, is invaluable thy gift. A tongue of flame arose from the spark in my heart by thy gentle blowing. Thou dost hear my softest whisper. Thou dost hear my softest whisper. Thou dost hear my softest whisper. Thou hast taught me thine own tongue. 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 And to read thy character written by thy pen, and the character written by thy pen. How shall I thank thee? How shall I thank thee? How shall I thank thee? Thank thee, my King. In the brightness of day and in the darkness of night, what didst thou not teach me? Thou hast taught me what is meant by wrong, and what is called right. Thou hast shown me the hideous face of life, and thou hast unveiled before me. Thou hast unveiled before me life's beautiful countenance. Thou hast taught me wisdom out of utter darkness, darkness of ignorance. Thou hast taught me to think after my thoughtless moments. Think after my thoughtless moments. Thou playest with me, my beloved Lord and Master. I then seek. Thou closest mine eyes. Thou closest mine eyes, and thou dost open them. Karumara jivore, karumara devedare ji. Karumara jivore, karumara devedare ji. Karuchi utare, tame bhavano para. Karumara jivore ji, karumara devedare ji. Karumara avagunere, karumara gunaganare ji. Karuji udare, tame bhavano para. Karumara avagunere, karumara gunaganare ji. Karumara jivore, karumara devedare ji. Rama ko adhara sita, Rama ko adhara. Rama ko adhara Sita, Rama ko adhara. Kerata genda jaya pai, Kerata genda jaya pai, Icha maja dara re, Abato genda milatanahi, Abato genda milatanahi, Nanda ke dulara re, Rama ko adhara Sita, Rama ko adhara. Rama ko adhara Sita, Rama ko adhara.
Well done.
Amari sarva gupta baten apko vidita Amari sarva gupta baten apko vidita tum ek shama karo krupani dhana pratita tu ek shama karo krupani dhana pratita hamare naam ra prardhana krupakari svikarana hamare naam ra prardhana krupakari svikarana dayani dhana deva sarva dosha ko nivarana dayani dhana deva sarva dosha ko nivarana Amari sarva, Amari sarva, Amari sarva, Amari sarva, Amari sarva, Bhutanaten apko vidita amare sar. Kangari mori madori rekana, Kangari mori madori rekana, Churian mori bhori rekana, Kangari mori madori rekana. La pata già portamo so, carata e la tavara, chandala con balason, shivekana. Churian mori, podi rekana, Bangari mori, marori rekana. La pata già portamo so, carata e la tavara, chandala con balason, shivekana, Bangari mori. Be fool not all night, the morn will break, the morn will break, the morn will break. Beware, O darkness, the sun will shine, the sun will shine, the sun will shine. Be not vain, be not vain. Oh, mist, will once more be clear, once more be clear. My sorrow forget not, forget not. Once again, once again, once again, joy will arise. Be fool not all night, the morn will break, the morn will break, the morn will break. Beware, O darkness, the sun will shine, the sun will shine, the sun will shine.
Please give, dear Dinis, dear Tarana, please give us an opportunity to thank you with all our hearts for this wonderful performance you gave us, this wonderful series of songs. It's just marvelous. Of course, we have known Tarana for quite a few years as an excellent musician, but you, Dinis, are a new surprise to us. We heard you in The Hague, of course, and then we thought that exactly the same thing with now. You don't only sing with your throat, with your mouth, but with your heart. And that gives such a splendid effect. That is such a wonderful thing which you did. You really deeply touched. Not only extremely happy, but also very grateful, deeply moved that you rendered these songs in such a wonderful way, gave them a new life after not having heard them for so long. That was really a great privilege for us. Thank you so very much. As a token of thanks, just hold it and give it back to me. Okay. So you get to the decoration. The choice of writing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you, Tarana, thank you so very much. Huh?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You did it beautifully. But we don't want to approach every song because it's so.
Schrijven.